Thank you so much, Art. Hi, everybody. I am very happy to be here this afternoon. Before I go any further here, I'm actually going to be joined by a wonderful colleague today who's going to be actually working in dual roles as moderator and co-facilitator. Her name is Marnie, and I'm going to let her speak just for a minute to talk a little bit about specifically what her job is today. Marnie.
Thanks, Robin. Like she said, I am Marnie. I am coming to you from St. Cloud today, and I do a little bit of everything here. You might see me at the front desk, you might have me in a workshop, or we might have a one-on-one appointment, or you might hear from me via email for your resume review. So good to see everybody on. It's nice to see everybody from Greater Minnesota, and hello to you all in the Twin Cities.
Thanks so much, Marnie. And Marnie is going to be working really, really hard today. She's going to be kind of looking after the chat box today. So as you are coming up with questions, she's going to be kind of fielding them. She's going to be sharing a few of them as we get on here, and I'll explain that more in just a few minutes about how that works and everything. But anyway, let's start here. CareerForce is Minnesota's statewide resource for career and job seekers. Now, you guys probably know this, but due to COVID-19, our physical offices are closed at this time. But we do encourage you to reach out to our local CareerForce location, whatever is nearest you. Reach out to us by email or by phone for individual assistance regarding, oh gracious, everything. Kind of what Marnie said, resumes, interviewing, career exploration, and more. Keep in mind, by the way, that we also can provide you information on Veterans Employment Service. If you are a vet or you are a family member of a vet, the Dislocated Worker Program, which I'm going to be talking about in more detail later on, and vocational rehabilitation services. So if your first time to these webinars, think of these webinars as kind of a place to get started. But we're not going to have time today to cover anything in real depth, and that's why you want to go to CareerForceMN.com, check out the additional resources that we have there, and then, as I said, reach out to us individually. Yes, we do hope to open physically soon, but we can't give you a date on that yet, and we want to make sure that we do that efficiently and we do it safely. So I would really recommend starting the relationship with us now remotely, and we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to have a list of attendees today, but for the purposes of unemployment, you will still need to mark in your unemployment account under the reemployment services that you've completed the CJS, sorry, can't talk this afternoon, workshop. The past sessions are going to be online, by the way, so you have options if you missed some stuff. Speaking of what we've got, as Art said, this is the 6th and final week of the first round of the Creative Job Search series. As you see, we're going to start the cycle up again on the 21st with career planning and preparing for the job hunt. So be aware that we are going to be cycling these through. Past sessions are going to be available so that you can check them out. Also, on our virtual learning page, and that's linked from our first page. So if you go to CareerForceMN.com, you can get to our virtual learning page. In addition to these CJS sessions, you will also seek job clubs that were led by Catherine Byers-Breach. And you can say a lot of other virtual learning opportunities where we talk about different things like LinkedIn, like just all kinds of stuff. So check it out. It's cool. All right, one quick note about my layout for this webinar. Now, what I want to do is I want to spend the first half sharing my material with you. And I'm not going to be stopping to answer questions at that point. I want to get it out first. However, if a question occurs to you as I'm talking, please chat it in. As I said before, Marnie was going to be organizing them. The second half of this session, I want to dedicate to the two of us fielding your questions and talking a little bit about what you guys want to talk about. So as we said before, if you don't mind everybody seeing your question, send it to all participants. If you would prefer just to go to Marnie and me, send it to host and presenter. Okay, so this is my work. This is what I want to do here for this session. What I'd like everyone to be able to do before you leave today is be able to create a basic T table that matches your skills with the needed skills listed in the job description. Now, I know some of you know about this before. I know maybe you've attended another webinar and you've heard about this, but if you haven't done it yet, think about why you haven't done it. Because I also hope that I do at least a serviceable enough job so that you understand why it's so important. The other thing that I want you guys to be able to do is know the advantages of networking. And sometimes I know that that word itself is kind of anxiety provoking, but I'm hoping that after we talk about it a little bit, you'll understand that A, it is important, and B, actually today with all of the virtual communication that's going on, networking is actually easier to do. The other thing is be able to understand when and why it's important to leave off experience and qualifications that go beyond the company's needs. And that can be a really tough thing to do because, face it, our accomplishments are important to us. And sometimes it's difficult to think, oh man, I don't want to take that off, but hopefully I'll do a good job of explaining to you why sometimes that is necessary. Yes, we're going to be able to talk about avoiding common pitfalls of being seen as overqualified, and that is something that we hear about again and again and again. How am I going to get them over this idea that I'm overqualified? And finally, successfully keep the momentum of the job search going for as long as it takes. Let's talk about some good news. But before we do that, I want to get you guys used to typing things into the chat box. And so I want to do a really quick thing here just because it's kind of fun. So before we talk a little bit about the good news, I want to hear from you. But I want to hear from you with just one word. So what I'd like you to do is in the chat box right now, if you were to describe job searching over the age of 40 or over the age of 50, whatever is applicable, in just one word, what would it be? And I'm already seeing some stuff coming in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. By the way, just make sure that the words you use are professional, even though you might be thinking something else. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Long, frustrating, painful. Yeah, yucky. I love that word. I love that word, yucky. It is. It is. Disconcerting. Adventurous. I love that. I love the fact that there's some positive ones coming in here as well. Yep, time consuming. Yep, that's a big one. A lot of people say, hey, is it just me or does it literally take longer to get a job now? It's not you. It literally does. Okay. Draining, you bet. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And keep, by the way, keep if you haven't shared yet, feel free. But yeah, I'm not silly enough to think that what I'm going to tell you today is suddenly going to change you and you're going to suddenly have a 180 and you're going to leave this session going, oh my goodness, everything's perfect. That isn't going to happen. But my aim today is to give you some practical advice and give you practical first steps so that you're feeling a little more empowered so that you leave going, yeah, actually, I think I can do this now. So that's kind of my aim. That's what I'm doing. All right. So I said that I was going to talk about good news. Let's start with good news because there's enough bad news running around. A recent article in the Harvard Business Review has given us some hopeful news. And this you will not have heard because this is actually pretty darn new. Employers are now looking for experienced workers to help them through the current crisis. They are actually starting return to work programs. And if you're in healthcare, if you're a nurse, you probably already know about this because they're really, really needing healthcare workers right now. They're setting up programs. One of them is called returnships, which is, as you can probably figure out, an internship, but it's for people who are experienced, but they just need their skills updated. Or they're just setting up direct hire programs. But what they're finding is that actively recruiting experienced workers is working. Why? Experienced workers can have the edge over their younger counterparts by bringing to the table institutional knowledge, education, work experience, mature perspective, stable life stage, dedication, loyalty, and energy and enthusiasm for returning to work. And employers are beginning to finally see this. We could have told them that years ago, but they're finally picking up on it. Now, when I am working with experienced workers, I am finding again and again that most of them are forgetting to promote their soft skills. And when I'm talking soft skills, I'm talking about things like adaptability, emotional intelligence, mentoring, cool-headedness. And honestly, I think the reason that they're forgetting to promote these is that these skills come so naturally to them. Think about it. I mean, especially, I was kind of half joke. If you're a parent, you know about adaptability. It isn't necessarily something you think of as formal skill. It's just something that you do. But in reality, these skills are not always developed yet in younger workers. And employers are looking to fill that soft skill gap. So I would say assignment number one, go back and take a look at your resume. And if you're not including the soft skills, like I just mentioned, you may want to add some of those because employers are looking for it. All righty. What has changed? Why am I talking about what's changed? Okay, so again, I'm working with people every day that are coming in and say, I've had the same job now for 20 years, 30 years, or I was out of work for a long time because I was doing something else, and a lot of things have changed since the last I looked, and this is kind of disconcerting because things don't work as like they used to. So as I said, if you've been out of the workforce for a significant amount of time, or you've been working in sustained employment, you may find that resume writing, interviewing, the job search itself has changed. What used to work may or may not work now. Now, some of you I know are going to be working in fields where employment changes often. I work with a lot of IT folks and they do gigs and then they're off for a bit and then they get another gig and then they're off. So some of the stuff that I'm going to go through is you will have heard before, but current events have actually altered interviewing quite drastically. So there's going to be stuff that's going to be valuable to you guys as well. Okay, so what has changed? Big thing that's changed is going to be matching your skills to the skills that are actually listed on the job description. We're going to be talking about that, the importance and actually how to do that. The other thing is the vital importance of networking. Now, that's not new. We've heard about networking for a long time, but honestly, that is becoming more and more important. The emphasis on networking is what is new. And I would argue that networking is easier these days because of technology. We'll see if you guys agree. Teleconferencing, I think everybody would agree that's new. This is the way that most interviews now are being held, not all of them, but I think it's popping up enough that you want to get yourself educated a little bit about how it's done and all that kind of good stuff. And finally, you. Oftentimes, we don't give a lot of thought to how we ourselves have changed since the last time we interviewed and how those changes affect how we self-market. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, matching skills to the skills that are listed on the job description. And I'm going to go through the T-table. And again, some of you may have seen this, but there's a method to my madness. This is such a powerful tool. And if you don't have one, I think you're going to want one. Historically, resumes were written chronologically, and even some of the interviews were conducted that way. So, you listed the duties of your most recent job on the top, and then you worked your way down from there. In this model of resume, the responsibility was on the hiring manager to make a connection between what you'd done before and what he or she wanted from you now. And pretty much all accomplishments were considered important, even if they weren't directly relevant to the job being pursued. Before I go any further, I want to throw in a little sidebar here. Chronological resumes are still being used. So, I mean, don't panic and think, well, I've got a chronological resume. Is that wrong? Do I need to change it? They haven't gone away. It's just that you have more options now. So what I would suggest is reach out to the CareerForce staff and ask them to work with you. Talk a little bit about where you've been, what you want to do, and they can help you decide what resume is best in telling your story. The other thing you might want to be aware of is next week on Wednesday, Marnie is going to be conducting a webinar on resumes, and she's going to actually be going through the different types of resumes and when you want to use what type. The thing that's kind of different these days is that employers, want to see directly and quickly the actual experience and accomplishments you have that directly relate to the skills listed on the job description. And they want to see that basically you're the right fit for the company. So one way you can do this is by using what is called a T-chart or T-table. Now, if this is brand new information for you, keep in mind that this is not something that you take into the interview and give to the hiring manager. This is just an exercise that you do yourself to help you prepare and define how you best fit the position. So, first of all, you want to start by just drawing a big T on a piece of paper. Next, list keywords from the job description in the left column. And then you probably already ahead of me. Next, you're going to write out your accomplishments or experiences that match with the keyword or the phrase. Now, this process is super. It gives you a clear picture of how you fit this position and prepare the talking points needed for the interview. So it's a snapshot of what kind of a fit you are for this position. So I'm a big believer in this tool. And I really encourage you, again, is if you have not created it yet, if you haven't done this, that you do so. Okay, now I said we were going to talk about networking. And as I said, networking as a concept is hardly new, but it is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the job process. Statistics are consistent. 75 to 80% of jobs come from knowing someone who knows someone. And another sobering reality is that there are many jobs available that simply will not appear on job boards. These jobs are advertised through word of mouth, associations, company-related websites. Networking and informational interviews can really help the experienced worker, especially one who has not been on the job hunting trail for a long time. So, for example, let's say that you now want to make a career change and get into something that you have never done before, or, like I did, you want to get back into something that you haven't done for years. Now, the big question for you is, do you have the skills that will make you competitive? The best people to give you that answer are the ones who are actually doing the work that you are seeking. Find those folks. Ask them to review your resume and give you candid feedback on whether they think that you're out of the box ready, or whether you may need to update your skills a little bit. Networking and informational interviews can also assess whether or not you even want that career change. You may want to set up an informational interview. And remember, informational interviews are simply you're meeting with somebody talking about what is the job and do you think I have a chance? And you're not trying to get a job at that point. And after talking to some of the people in the field that you're pursuing, you may discover that that new job is not exactly what you want. That's fine. Back out of that road and head down another one. Talking to the people that are doing the work you want to do will also give you insider tips about where to find the jobs and what specifically the employers are going to want to hear. They can tell you about, really important software. Oh, if you want this job, you're going to need to be proficient in this software. If there are certifications that would put you over the top, and even what kind of language to use. Another advantage to networking is that you can find out about jobs before they are posted. So insiders can sometimes share things like, well, there's nothing in the department right now, but I can tell you they're budgeting for a position that sounds exactly like what you're looking for, and they should know more by April. And finally, more experienced workers are choosing to focus on a specific company or organization rather than waiting for the jobs to be posted. So this is kind of a new trend that people think about a company or an organization that really interests them. The next thing they do is they research it thoroughly. They review their qualifications, and I would add, especially the skills that you have that are going to be valuable in this current time of difficulty. Because remember, every organization pretty much is upheaved at this time. They're going to need some special out-of-the-box skills. Then reach out and meet them. Now, that can be as simple as a quick phone call, it can be an email, it can be an introduction from a contact of yours, it can be going onto LinkedIn and connecting with them from there. Let them know that you are simply opening the door on a possible relationship. You're not expecting them to create a position for you right away, because that can be off-putting. But honestly, the better and more positively you get to know them, the better your chances of being thought of when the next position comes up. Now, as I said, I'm brushing broad strokes here just in the interest of time, but let's move on for now, and then we can look for questions and things later. But let's talk about teleconferencing, because this is a big thing on people's mind now. I'm talking with a lot of people now over the last couple of months that have expressed concern about having to conduct an interview over the internet. They're not real confident in the technology. Now, the tips that I'm going to be giving you over the next couple of minutes are all assuming that you have access to a computer with a camera and a microphone. If you do not, give us a call. We will be happy to troubleshoot with you. Don't feel like you're going to be out of contention simply because you can't access the camera and the mic during the time of the teleconference. We'll help you and support you on that. So, if you're concerned about the technology, if you're not feeling really comfortable about it, there's one bit of good news for you. You're teleconferencing right now. This is teleconferencing. So you've taken a positive first step. If it is kind of a new thing for you, I advise you now to get familiar with communicating online, via online. Don't worry, you do not have to be familiar with the specific platform that the company uses. Remember, they're going to make it as easy for you as possible. The last thing they want is to have some complicated process that's going to confuse their candidates and take a lot of time navigating through. But if you can, and maybe you're already doing this with family members, but something like Zoom, which is really quick, really easy and free, just get used to using it so that you feel a little less anxious come that interview. Okay, the next thing you want to think about is setting up your background. And what I mean by that is I'm talking literally the background that people are going to see when you are on camera. Now, this is interesting. This is brand new, too, because they just got done doing these polls. Polls recently conducted indicate that employers do not like the fake backgrounds that sometimes you can put in, the seascapes or, whatever that make it look like you're not sitting in a room. They do like things like bookshelves or unobtrusive art. So just make sure that wherever you're seated in your house, the background doesn't compete with you. They should be looking at you, not trying to figure out what it is on the wall or, things like that. The other thing is choose lighting that is complementary. By the way, believe it or not, inexpensive lights that are made just for online video conferencing are sold now, so you might want to consider those. If you're a tech geek like I am, I kind of like that idea. But if not, just make sure that you are sitting in light where they can see your face, they can see your enthusiasm, your expressions, they can see your eye contact, and that it's kind of warm light that isn't going to wash you out, that's going to make you look good. Dress as you would face-to-face, even down to the shoes. It may seem like kind of silly because you're sitting there at a desk and they're not going to see, below the desk, but wearing the shoes that you would wear to an interview, even if they can't be seen, can help you psychologically. And here's the other thing. Put a Post-it note on your computer to look into the camera lens. This is the thing that I noticed almost immediately when I started doing a lot of teleconferencing. We're so used to looking at the computer screen, we tend to do that. We forget to actually look into the camera lens and make that eye contact. Making eye contact online is every bit as important as making it face to face. And so is smiling. So again, I would say plan on doing practice videos of yourself. You can do that on your computer. You could do it maybe on a smartphone. See if you're smiling enough or maybe a little too much. In addition, make sure that your audio is good so that nobody has to strain to hear you. And then finally, this is actually one of the most important ones. Always have a phone number of the interviewer on hand in case there's a technology mix-up. And if something goes off and you want to make sure that you're getting a hold of them really, really, really quickly. So again, I'm painting broad strokes here. Contact us if you want to know how to, or by the way, this is something that we do as well. We do mock interviews and we do it over teleconferencing. And I have conducted a mock interview simply for somebody who said she wants to practice. The final thing that may have changed since you last interviewed is you. Take some time to think about the following. How do you feel about looking for employment now, and do those feelings show? Now, of course, obviously, if you're really enthusiastic about the idea, that's great. Absolutely, you want to let them show. But if your feelings are negative, if you still have some maybe emotional leftovers from leaving your last employment or resentment about having to look for work now, this could be a problem. And it's recommended that you reach out to somebody in your life that you trust to be straightforward with you. Ask them if they pick up on any negativity, any bitterness, or any just kind of struggle to move on when you're talking about your transition, your last position. If they do, if they are picking up on some of that, feel welcome to reach out to us and we can help you find ways of talking about your current job search in a real positive and, by the way, effective way. Next, evaluate your skills that you have now. You've accumulated many, many skills, both on the job and just by living your life. Ask yourself what makes you a better candidate today than you were the last time. What have you learned or gotten better at? What do you have now that maybe younger employees just have yet to learn? And finally, what are your goals? Now, interviewers are almost certain to ask you about this, and it will be really important for you to have a specific answer. Now, honestly, your goal might be to retire in 3 years, but I would advise you to work with us about how to answer that question carefully so that it is honest, but also it's something that won't necessarily take you out of contention. It's really hard for me to give you to give you an example now of how to handle that because everybody's situation is so different. That's why I suggest that you work with someone individually and get a customized approach to that. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to go through really quickly here is talking about mistakes that are commonly made because we talk with employers on a regular basis. And we like to get their feedback about what are the mistakes that are being made by experienced candidates. How are they kind of maybe stumbling and they don't even realize they're doing it. And the employers are telling us that the common stumbling blocks are, number one, being seen as overqualified, losing momentum in the job search, their narrative is kind of negative, or they're not updating their skills. So let's jump into that. Let's jump into the elephant in the room because this one is the biggest one. The most common reason candidates are perceived to be overqualified is that they listed too many accomplishments on their resume, or they have listed accomplishments and skills that are unrelated to the job that's open. So let me give you an example. A former restaurant manager who genuinely wants to obtain a position as a cook, done the management thing, really isn't interested in that anymore. They want to focus on the food. Now, that person might be sending the wrong message if their resume includes accomplishments like reducing operating costs by 30%. Now, that is a fantastic accomplishment. And I don't even know if it's realistic because I don't know anything about restaurant management. But let's just say they did it. It's a great accomplishment and they're probably really proud of it. But the hiring manager could wonder if this person is going to be tempted to offer advice to their boss about how the kitchen is run. So in this circumstance, a better bet would be for them to focus on the skills that are listed on the job description and not to add other accomplishments achieved at a higher level. By the way, a skills-based resume would probably be best in scenarios like these. And as I said before, if you're not familiar with the different kinds of resumes, please reach out to us for more details, because we'll be happy to give that to you. By the way, it's also smart to think carefully about including unrelated accomplishments as well. This can be tricky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends. So, for example, let's say you created a model of neighborhood philanthropy. You created some kind of neighborhood giving program, and it worked really, really well, and it gained national attention. It was modeled in several other states, and that's an amazing accomplishment. But could a mention of that be sending the message that you would be bored in the job you're going for if that job isn't that extensive? Would they be worried that you would get bored and want to move on in a few months? So the takeaway here is basically just think carefully about how all entries could be perceived, the good and the bad, and a lot of times it ends up being, you have to just balance it. So that's kind of how unintentionally people can be seen as overqualified with a resume. Let's move on to the interview. Now, I like to tell people that it's important to remember that generations M and Z are the folks that will probably be interviewing you. And now I'm speaking in broad terms. There's exceptions to every rule, but in general, these generations are highly collaborative and they're team-oriented. That's a value of theirs, and they're going to be looking for that. Now, if you've been the boss for many years, and let's say you're not necessarily going for a boss position now, it still can be really easy to slip into boss mode and speak like you did when you were in charge. Now, that can come across as threatening or off-putting. Not always, but sometimes. The other thing is just speaking naturally with a confidence that they may not possess. I tend to speak very confidently, and it's not even something I do consciously sometimes. But I'm finding that sometimes confidence can be misunderstood as being somebody who may not want to listen to teammates or consider their point of view. So that can, as I said, that can be a really tricky line to walk. So again, mock interviewing is a great way of giving yourself a chance to practice listening techniques, looking for opportunities of communicating in that interview that you're really looking forward to the chance to fit in with their established team. And one of the biggest challenges, actually, that is reported by folks who are on the job search is just honestly running out of steam. Many seekers share with me that they have started and, they've got loads of enthusiasm and they've got motivation and they've got organization and they're setting goals, and all of a sudden family commitments pop up, or they find that frustration is getting the better of them, or they just lose the drive. If you're determined to obtain employment, make goals for yourself now, but also seek out a support network that will help you stick to your plan.
Rob, just for a second, we're getting quite a few questions in the chat box. You mentioned the term Gen M. Were you considering that to be millennials, or could you define?
Yes. I'm sorry about that. Yes, those are the millennials, and then we've got Gen Z coming up who are just graduating from college right now. So that's what I meant.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, everybody. These people are like, what is she talking about? Okay. All right. So I was talking a little bit about just kind of losing the zest. I always recommend just thinking about it as a marathon rather than a sprint. And just like a marathon runner needs hydration and fuel all the way through the race, you're going to need that too. Now, absolutely, you are more than happy to prove me wrong. Snag a position shortly after you start your search, but that's wonderful. But don't beat yourself up if you don't. Things are really challenging these days, and it calls for endurance. So just make sure that you're taking care of you in that way too. One of the things that I mentioned is a common mistake that employers are kind of hearing, particularly in the interview, is folks are unintentionally coming across as negative. As I said earlier, if you've got some residual bitterness regarding maybe how you left or a former employer, seek assistance in finding truthful, neutral language to use when talking about those situations. If a new employer gets the impression that they're interviewing somebody who maybe has got a lot of judgments or they're sitting there with some emotional baggage, it's going to be really natural for them to choose another candidate who's excited and positive and enthusiastic about the new opportunity. And by the way, that's not to say that you need to create fake excitement, because we all know they're going to spot that immediately. But what I generally, encourage people to do is just leave the baggage outside the door and bring into the room your skills and your accomplishments instead. By the way, I bring this up because honestly, this comes up and this confusion does come up. Be careful about word choice. The words fired and laid off are not interchangeable. Laid off means that you lost your job because the organization closed, restructured, downsized, moved, or there was no longer need for your particular position. A lot of people have been laid off due to COVID-19. And there is nothing to be ashamed of. We're getting a lot of questions these days about how do I explain to them that I lost my job because of COVID? It's actually pretty straightforward. Just tell them that, because it is so prevalent right now, sadly, they're going to understand, and they know that that has nothing to do with you. The word itself, fired, is really kind of negative. I would suggest a more neutral term, involuntary separation. Now, this is a tricky situation. It is really understandable that some people just don't even want to talk about it if they have been let go and it was kind of their bad. But I really do encourage you to work with us and we can help you talk about these things. If you were fired, do not represent yourself as laid off, because an employer they're doing a background check. They can discover the truth pretty quickly. Being fired happens more often than you would think. And there are lots of ways that you can address that issue truthfully and positively. So again, it's tough to do, but seriously, reach out to us. We can help. Okay, finally, take a good look at your skill set. So when you think about it, if you've been employed with the same organization for 30 years, you have got a solid set of skills that your particular organization needed you to have. However, when you go out exploring other organizations, you may find that other skills might be needed. Sometimes it's just not enough to be willing to learn. So what I'm getting at here is hiring managers got two candidates. One candidate says, I may not have personal experience with this particular software, but I am certainly willing to learn. And that's cool. That is great. But the other candidate says, yes, I've used this software for the past 3 years in my previous position, and here are my specific accomplishments with using it. So the importance of that software, I think, may be the determining factor to who gets that job. You might be interested in going back to work that you did many years ago. Now, in this scenario, it kind of depends on the nature of the work. Even a degree may not be entirely what you need to be qualified, and I kind of use my own background here. If someone obtained a degree in education and a teaching license, say back in the 80s, teaching is one of those industries where they tend to change every few years. And if you haven't been in a classroom for a while, you will need to know what the current teaching approaches are, what e-learning software they're using. Certainly today, you're going to have to know how to bring dynamic, successful instruction to your students remotely. So that's why it's so important to take a good, honest look at, okay, where are my skills now, and how are they in comparison to the other folks that are going to be going to this job? There are times when you will need to update your skills. As I stated earlier, talking to people who are currently doing the work that you're pursuing is a good way to find out if you're up to date or not. Now, we can help in certain areas. Now, I mentioned to you dislocated worker services, and they are terrific if you need, let's say that you're going to be competitive only if you get a license or a certification. You've got everything else they need. You're a super candidate. If you had this certification, this would put you over the top. Dislocated worker funds can help you there. It tends to be, dislocated worker funds tend to be applicable more to short-term things like licensures or certificates. Project management was a big thing a few years ago, so there are smaller programs that you can go to and it takes a couple of weeks or it takes a month or whatever. That is kind of where you're going to want to go to for dislocated worker. Dislocated worker program is not going to help you if it's a 4-year degree. That's a totally different thing. Now, the other thing that we have going for you right now, which we're so excited about, and I want to make sure that you guys know about it if you don't, is our partnership with Coursera. And when you go to CareerForceMN.com, you're going to see references to Coursera. Coursera is a website that has accumulated 3,800 online classes that were developed by U.S. universities and companies. The subject matter is all over the place. I like communication. I went on, typed in communication in their search box. I came up with at least 7 classes that I want to take. I have no idea if I have time. If you want to learn software, there is a lot of exceptional classes about software, new software, software that is in demand. And in many of these classes, you will actually get a certificate, certificate, it's a long day, guys, that you can put on your resume. That you will have. Best thing about this, it's free. You can sign up for this right now. You can actually continue to sign up for this until September. And then the classes you can take until next March. So there are several months here where you can take these classes for free, and you can have this fantastic education available to you. So again, we tend to sound like we're doing a little commercial here, but we are really excited about this, and this can be a fantastic way of answering that dreaded interview question, what have you been doing to improve yourself the last position? So you can go in, you can take a look and see if there's classes that is directly related to the work that you're doing, and then don't forget also just to take the classes that interest you as well. Okay, I did happen to glance to my right and I saw somebody say, how do we contact Dislocated Worker Program? Call your local CareerForce and they will give you a URL and you will simply go to that and you answer like 7 questions and then it goes to them and then you will get an email back. That's perfect timing because right now I want to spend the last 15 minutes just talking about questions. And I'm going to let Marnie kind of take the reins here a little bit and start us off with what's coming in.
Okay, so we have got a few things here. One point that you made at the beginning was adapting to technology like we are today, adapting to just all kinds of changes. And so Dale had said adapt because those that cannot adapt run the risk of becoming extinct. Maybe?
Absolutely. Well, it's that. And also I was thinking also, I got a job not terribly long ago on the strength of my accomplishments in being able to stop on a dime and go a different direction. The hiring manager that I was speaking with, he said, I have a very young team, and he said, they're smart and they're wonderful, but he said, inevitably, clients change their mind. You're going along, you've done 3 months of work, it's fantastic work. All of a sudden, the client comes in and goes, nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. He said, I need somebody who's able to stop and be able to reassess and go that different direction. And he said, right now we're struggling with that skill in our team. So it can be anything that you're asked to adapt to. Technology is certainly part of it, but it's also just being able to, again, do the things that we've been doing for years and years and years, which is all of a sudden we're thrown in something totally new, like we're all doing these days. Are you the person who can go, great, all right, excellent, I have 3 new ideas of how we can do this? Or are you going to be the person who's going to go back to your desk and go, oh, I can't believe it. Oh, this is so scary. Oh, this is so stressful. You want to talk about those times where you have stopped on a dime, gone to your boss, said, no problem, this is what I think we should do. That's kind of what I was thinking when I said adaptability.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. We have someone who is very excited about networking.
Yay! I'm so happy.
All you very extroverted folks out there, some of us who are more introverted, it becomes very intimidating to make that first phone call, or even after you've made that first email and you follow up with a phone call, it can be, there can be a hump of getting over that. But what do you have to lose, right?
And by the way, I encourage people, if nervousness about reaching out to somebody is what's keeping you from doing that, please get a hold of me. And I'm serious about that because I will be happy to help you. Some of the best, absolute, most amazing advice I ever got about job seeking, I got from informational interviews from people who are willing to be a mentor for me. It is scary, but it is an amazingly helpful situation. And I always tell people seriously, if that's the one thing, if you're like, I like the idea, Robin, I like the idea of talking to somebody and asking questions, but I'm scared of talking to somebody I don't know, contact me. I will help you.
Thank you, Robin. We did have somebody talk about pinning the interviewer to the screen so it doesn't toggle back and forth when you are interviewing via video or virtually. That was a hint from Alice, and Art actually pasted a link to how to do that in Zoom.
Fantastic.
If any of this is way over your head or you still don't understand what we're talking about, please, again, call your local staff. They are very likely to have experienced that before. And if they're not, they can reach out to the rest of us and we can help you somehow practice before you get to the actual interview. How does one go about finding or recruiting a mentor?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for asking that question. That is great. One of the big things that you can do is, first of all, just let everybody know that you are looking and that you're looking for information about a certain area. How I met my favorite mentor was honestly, and this is not a plug, but it was honestly through a workforce facilitator. She came up to me after class and she said, what can I do to help you? And I said, I don't know if you really can, because I said, I feel like I'm looking for something really specific and I can't even really tell you. I know it involves teaching and I know it involves teaching adults, but I don't really know anything more. And she went, oh, I know exactly who you want to talk to. She says, there's somebody that I know. She comes here. She does seminars for us. Here's her name and number. Go for it. And so I had a wonderful, warm introduction right there. Another thing that I would say is if you want lucky, like I was, the other thing is I would look for, again, organizations. And with the help of me, if necessary, or somebody else in your family or friends or whatever, give them a call. Years ago, I thought I wanted to be a volunteer coordinator. I chose to reach out to the Science Museum of Minnesota because I was really impressed with their volunteer program. I had no idea who ran it. I'd never met her before. And I literally left a voicemail message saying, you have not met me, but I am looking for information about the job that you do. And if you could spare me 30 minutes of your time, I have some very specific questions, and I said, we can do this however you want, over the phone, face to face, whatever. She was fabulous. We met. She gave me a ton of information. For me, the end of that ended up being I decided I didn't want to do it, but I was so grateful for her. So a lot of times I would say, just focus on what do you want to do, then ask yourself who is doing it. Talk to a lot of people, throw out a Facebook, if you're on Facebook, throw out a general question to your friends. Hey, do you know anybody who's in this particular area? And then ask us too.
Right.
Robin, just to add to that, I had someone reach out to me from Maryland. This is Art, by the way, from Maryland, who wanted to find out about a job in Minnesota because they were looking to do something similar. Within 5 minutes, I was able to connect that person exactly with the mentor they needed to implement that program in their state. That's a very courageous call to make. And yes, you're going to hear no. But boy, that one yes, it pays off.
Absolutely. All right. Another question. If they say they will reach out to you if you are in the running, do you still follow up?
What I would say is a good thing to realize is at the time they say that, they say, hey, we'll reach out to you. Ask them. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being able to say, well, thank you so much. I just want you guys to know I'm still really excited about this job. As a result of our conversation today, my enthusiasm for this job is just as strong. Is it okay for me if I haven't heard for whatever reason, if I haven't heard from you, is it okay for me to reach out to you? Or would you prefer to reach out to me and just put it back in their court? But I think it's a good idea to ask because again, it serves that dual purpose of reminding them that, hey, I'm still excited about this. Please pick me.
Thank you. All right, here's a good one. Is it ever a good idea to include on a resume business loss due to COVID-19?
I personally would not say that on a resume because, again, I tend to think of the resume as being a wonderful marketing document where you are marketing yourself and your skills. Honestly, these days, they're going to take a look at the date, and I'm guessing the vast majority of hiring managers are going to know exactly what happened. So I feel personally that on that resume, it is just not, it's not necessary because I think most people are going to know.
I have to second that. I totally agree with you. There's
It's
almost never a reason to put that information on a resume. Obviously, we're all going to have to fill out applications either before or after the resume, and there's a reason for leaving spot on the application. But on your resume, that is your marketing document, so stick to marketing yourself. All right. Here from Heidi, she says, been in nursing whole life, almost 20 years. Is this a good time to change careers with all the competition? She's undecided of what career to go into.
okay. I would say, and fantastic, by the way, that you have been doing this for so long. I think it's great. You're going to know your specific industry better than me. The things that and I'm not in nursing, I don't know a lot about it. I've been reading that they're desperate for nurses at this point. So I can't speak to the competition component because you might be looking at things and have information that I don't. But it sounds to me like you're at this point right now where you could go a number of different places. My recommendation for you is we teach career exploration here. And we teach it in groups or we also teach it just individually. And I would reach out to us because we have got some tools and we have some assessments that you can take that you can, assess where you are and you can solidify exactly where you are at this point. Competition, I wouldn't let competition be the reason that you jump one way or the other. Because that competition is always going to be there And you may have competition against one person, you may have competition against 100 people. Competition is always going to be there. I think what I'm hearing from you and your question is that you may need to want to spend a little bit of time just exploring your options first and then making a decision from there.
Again, I have to second that. Definitely reach out to us and you can talk to somebody about some tools you can use and just use us as a sounding board. All right, next question. The hiring manager and I discussed a role prior to it being posted. He encouraged me to apply when it was posted. Applicant tracking system rejected my application. Should I be following up with the hiring manager?
Yes, please. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, applicant tracking systems are frustrating. And there are a lot of times that people who are absolutely qualified, and I actually worked with a gentleman who had the exact same thing. He knew the hiring manager, just like you. He had the meeting with them, and the technology went no. So yes, I think that should be an absolute priority. Let them know, and let them know if there is a way that you can send the resume in another way via email or whatever. So absolutely go for it.
All right. Hannah says, how do you explain large gaps in employment, like several years,
Yep.
such as for treatment, illness, or mental health?
You bet. Honestly, I think the best way for that is going to be a skills-based resume. Because when you think about it, if there were gaps in how you displayed the skills they need, that could be any number of reasons. That could be that you were out of work. It could also be that you were working, but you were working in an unrelated job. The point is, you want to get the fact that you have actually had experience doing the things they want you to do. And the best resume that's probably going to do that for you is going to be a skills-based, where you're actually organizing your resume according to skill set and telling them, yes, I've done this. Here's my accomplishments. Yes, I've done this. Here's that accomplishments. Yes, there is going to be on the second page where you're going to be listing in a chronological list what you've been doing recently. But by that time, they've taken a look at all of the skills that you do have, and they're definitely going to want to talk to you.
All right, we just have 2 minutes left, but I have one comment here and that I'd like to comment on.
Okay.
Just a question to the comment. Someone says, I have been in the manufacturing sector in various roles for the past 30 years. I feel that when prospective employers look at my resume and quickly start to add up my experience and soon realize my age, this seems to be a big negative since potential employers think I am too old. So I ask this job seeker, is this something that you are concluding for yourself, or is this something that you have been told? Because I think that we have a narrative sometimes in our own head. Often job seekers get stuck on one thing or one perceived barrier. Um, and so I ask that when you are starting to think these things, and we all think them, is this my own narrative, or have I really sussed this out? Have I asked for the feedback? I do it. I do it myself, so I have to do those things, practice what I preach.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. I think that is so smart, and I've lived that myself. The last job I had before coming to work for CareerForce was in a millennial-led tech company, and nobody was more shocked than I was when they said, please come work for us. But again, I plugged in skills they didn't have. And yes, a lot of my skills were soft skills, but the point is that I plugged in a need. I fulfilled a need for them that they had, and that was what is important to them. You guys, it's 4 o'clock. We gotta stop. Thank you so much. I realize there's probably questions that were not answered just because of time. So what I would suggest is that you reach out. Art is going to send you a packet of follow-up information that is going to be very helpful. Included in that is going to be the contact information for all of the career forces in your area. Reach out to us virtually for now. and work with us, and we will be more than helpful to help you through step by step what you guys need. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.